Engine Performance Expo, a great collection of engine builders and fine minds, and we're coming down to the stretch here, folks. And it's getting a little punchy, right? It's getting a little loose here as we get another roundtable. Good news is we've got Dan Begle from Mahle to get us back straight. Welcome. This is our first live interaction that we've had.
This is. I saw myself on several videos. Hopefully everybody learned something from the videos that we did earlier, and it's good to be here with everybody.
And no pressure, we're planning on you carrying this one.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I'm tired now, Dan. I'm taking a nap over here. This should have been apparent, like you're coming in the game, late in the game, new energy. Charles is back, of course. Talk about, obviously, this whole thing, like with your dad's engine, everything, the thickness of the rings. The advance of technology, right? That's what drives things forward. The advance of technology, and you've all been on the cutting edge. If you weren't, like you wouldn't be industry leaders.
Well, me and Ben did a talk at SEMA with Billy. Yep. So I actually did a talk at me and you together at SEMA. Then me, you, and Billy did a talk at PRI about that exact topic. About it's the material, the coating technologies, the measurement technologies, all of these things we've been kind of dancing around the last 2 days. That's what enables a 300 horsepower game. That's what enables the engine to pick up 50 or 90 horsepower from where it was before, because you shouldn't be afraid of the thin rings because we have the right material, the right coatings, and then we can measure the cylinder bore finish correctly. We can do all these things by pulling those technologies together, but enables that next level of performance. And I forget who said it earlier, or maybe yesterday, I said, and you shouldn't be scared of it because it's not new. It's actually been around for a long time, actually.
Well, and so often one new technology is dependent on some other technology coming to fruition. On a grander scale, I think about, like, for example, the evolution of turbocharging over the last, say, 15 years. But really, turbos have been around since World War II. They didn't really make it onto the performance scene until the electronic fuel injection technology made it easier to control the engine. And so suddenly the development of turbocharging and EFI were sort of parallel now. One technology depended on another one, no different than stuff inside the engine.
Correct, absolutely.
So what's next? That's I hate to ask that question, but we've covered so much ground. Is there more ground to cover? Are there new things coming? Like where are we looking to find that next coating? Is it a material? Where is it? What is it? What do you think?
I can't help but think after talking to Mike Copeland at Arrington Performance and what he's done with hydrogen combustion, that we can't, as racers, build a hydrogen combustion race engine. In fact, I know AVL is doing it, aren't they, Mark?
I think they are, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but I think I've seen documentation and stuff from them about it. And stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, he's unleashed people like AVL.
Yes, they're going to get something done. So, they're going to figure it out. So
yeah.
Well, I found it to be interesting. You referenced Mike talking about some of the characteristics of the hydrogen and the way it made its power. He's taking an engine that was pretty much designed for gasoline and converting it. But when people start to design for the characteristics of hydrogen, it could end up being different than what we have now.
Oh, exactly. I mean, Toyota has already done it in a partnership with Yamaha. In fact, recently the CEO of Toyota came out and said, we're going to pursue the hydrogen route because there's literally just not enough supply chain to build a complete full battery electric fleet. They just can't do it. Right. We have to have alternative technology. So part of that's going to be hybrid, but part of it's going to be hydrogen combustion. So
you're combustible hydrogen, not hydrogen fuel cell. People get confused about that all the time. Right. They think hydrogen fuels, which was discussed a long time. Combustible hydrogen, and it's in a tank, and we're turning an engine.
And again, that's another one of those technologies that's somewhat dependent on other technologies being able to promote it. The energy density of the hydrogen is so much different than gasoline. It's going to require all kinds of different ways of thinking about how we, build engines, right?
Exactly.
From the materials we use to the coatings that we use, reducing friction, all that stuff's going to matter. I hate to be cheesy, but I feel like listening to Mark Malberg and coming over from what he does to our race industry, we haven't really even scratched the surface of what we know about how to apply, measurement and metrology and stuff to. the really, really high-level race teams have been working on that stuff for a while, but as that trickles down to the machine shops and the performance engine builders and stuff, like, man, we have so much more to expand there that, again, like, some of these technologies that feel like they're emerging, they're not really. They've been around a long time, but they're finally in a position where they can begin to have development and expansion based on the fact that we now have these other, technologies available.
Yeah, I think, Ben, to go with that, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns materials. So, we at Mahle, we're doing a tremendous amount of testing on hydrogen engines. Unknown what it's doing. Hydrogen is a smaller atom, so when it burns quicker. It's more combustible, so to controlling it, 4% of room fill of hydrogen is combustible by static.
Oh, wow.
4%. So now we think about, okay, what's happening? We don't know what's happening with materials. We at Mahle, we're testing some of that right now, but pistons becoming brittle, valves becoming brittle, controlling the combustion area, cooling pistons versus what we conventionally know today as creating a pistons and rings and so forth, but getting heat to keep it a cooler burn, to keep the components, whether you coat it or not, to be determined, but to keep the pistons, the valves from breaking. Then, sealing. What are we doing sealing? Because you have so much leakage. All engines have a certain amount of leakage that goes in there. Well, back to the 4%, you create 4% of hydrogen that goes into the crankcase. Now you create a large capsule. We all remember the Hindenburg, and
Wasn't good.
wasn't good. So now we're working on positive displacement ventilation of forcing area in. Kind of, you can imagine, I know, Ben, you're a boat guy, but an inboard engine, what do? You have to ventilate that.
Sure.
Well, we have to come up with means to ventilate crankcase to create a suitcase of explosive gas as your family is driving down the road. Not a good day, right?
There's a gapless second ring for that, by the way.
So, and controlling the combustion, Mahle makes a jet ignition system, and we have found that by doing the jet ignition on there, we have increased controlling the burn. We have made 50% increase in horsepower.
Wow.
And 30% increase in torque.
Wow.
By applying this system to the hydrogen into the engine. So there's a lot of development going into the hydrogen engines, and the efficiency, controlling it, safety, performance. We all love performance.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we're all sitting here. I heard 50% horsepower increase. I'm like,
That's a big number.
That's a big number,
I was just about going to tell you I was going to retire before that happened, but now that 50%, I'm all in now. How many years do you think this is going to be?
One thing that Mahle does that's incredible is the amount of research and development you guys do. I would say that you don't do a good job of telling everybody about it. Like Lake and I were over there at PRI, and you guys were showing us some of the absolutely mind-blowing level of R&D that you guys are doing. And so it's no surprise that you're looking at new and emerging trends and technologies as well. But my gosh, the level of investment that Mahle has put into this stuff is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and coming from the race side and seeing it, and then going to Mahle, and unfortunately there's some segmentation in Mahle with business units that don't communicate as well. Everybody's fair game to me to talk to until they tell me to shut up.
Right.
Because I'm always on a quest of finding this information out to pass on to educate. That's why we're all here. But there's so much, and it's my drive to try to get some more of that information to get out here, and because there is so much testing that we've tested for engines that came into build, made their complete cycle through the consumer, and now they hit the aftermarket, and we were the original designers of how that came about. So I'm trying to close that loop, and every day I uncover something. It's like, wow, this is really cool. The new bearings I just launched, super cool. New technology, just applying it to older applications, small block, big block Chevy, got a whole nother stuff coming in.
It's hard not to get excited when you see something. You're like, I can apply it to this, and I can take it over there, and, you know. And,
that ignition, I read about I don't know if it was an SAE white paper or something. I was reading about that ignition, and I was talking about how it could be combined with direct injection with gasoline for sizable gains, and to be able to run like double stoichiometric. I think that was the article I was reading that was referencing it to go way leaner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It was way leaner. I actually, sidebar, I got hit up on a nitro fuel team. You can't talk about this.
Top secret.
Nitro fuel team.
Turn it off for a second. Then come right back.
Can we test this to get more horsepower out of a nitro fuel engine? I was like, probably not a good idea.
No, I say we should do it. We should do it. Now, on that, we do have a couple of questions. Everybody been watching all day. I think this is the time we spark something. People love to talk about technology. And so, rapid fire, and there are no bad questions. But like Nate, who's been out there all day, by the way, thank you very much, Nate. Curious to know about ignition requirements of hydrogen. Do we know? We have any answer? Like, is it just as simple as a one spark plug and you hit it at the same time we do with fuel? Or
well,
you're the expert.
I'm not the expert.
Mike Copeland is the expert on this too, because he's not here right now.
Inside joke. I apologize.
Now, I do know the expert, okay, and know him very well. You guys know him as well.
We're all enamored by him.
Yes. So the jet ignition actually uses a spark plug to basically, it's an indirect injection of putting nitrogen in, igniting it, and it's actually atomized as it's coming out. So technically, kind of plus or minus, it's using a regular spark system. It's igniting it indirectly, and
the spark is there to make a blowtorch, basically.
To make a blowtorch, yes.
It's like a pre-chamber.
Yeah, it's a pre-chamber. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
See, there you go. And one more that came in. What do you guys think about like electric compressors instead of exhaust-driven compressors? So I think that's a technology that gets used in a couple of places in F1 instead of an exhaust-driven turbocharger, say, using the electric motor instead of driving the wheels just to create boost. What do you think about that? Asks Dan.
Blake.
Well, obviously the Formula One engines today are the most efficient in terms of how much fuel energy is actually making it to the crankshaft. If in terms of that thermal efficiency, a good diesel engine used to be around 35%. Good race motors are going to be around that same number. They're over 50% thermal efficiency, which is rivaling like combined gas turbine stuff. It's crazy. But part of that is the fact they're utilizing that technology. So when they go full boost, qualifying lap, overtake mode, you have the turbocharged engine, but the exhaust is actually routed to divert from the turbo, and it's straight exhaust. But the turbo compressor is still running off of battery power. So they're spinning it at full boost. They can make full boost at any engine RPM, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And so obviously, if you're looking at how do we make sustainable fuels, which they're working on, talked about yesterday a little bit, net carbon zero fuel, so that the full life cycle from production to combustion is net carbon zero, that fuel burned the most efficiently as possible leaves the least carbon footprint, that's the goal, right? It's the whole thing is, do we want to say pick the winner, or do you want to let technology sort out what's the most thing? So I think if you look at where Formula One's going, they're saying we're going to do sustainable fuel. We're going to use it most efficiently as possible. If you go to, say, a series hybrid, where there's still an electric motor that actually powers the vehicle. But where does that power come from? Well, batteries are big, they're heavy, the fire issues and all that. If you have a small, incredibly efficient internal combustion engine, just generating the power source for the car, and that's a sustainable fuel, how's that not a bad answer?
Interesting. No, I love it. And we all want the future to get here as soon as is possible, right?
I like the old stuff. Give me gas, give me oil, give me...
That's why you and Jason Line get along.
I won't argue with it.
But I would run an electric motor on the water pump, the oil pump, everything if I could.
Vacuum
You know what I
pump.
mean? Vacuum, everything.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's
just drag.
It's drag. It's horsepower. It's
Yeah.
that, look at a top fuel car. What do you think how much power do you think it costs to turn that blower?
A lot.
Well,
I mean, I've been to Bill
We
Miller's
shouldn't
when
say
he was
that.
testing
We're going
them.
to show up, right? If we spill the beans right now,
no, don't spill it.
We just say a lot.
But you
Yeah.
want to say
No.
about Bill Miller? Go
I
ahead.
said when Bill Miller Engineering was doing blowers for the NHRA cars. I mean, the motor that he took to turn it was big. He was testing blowers. He had a big motor just to turn the thing.
Yep.
It's like, how much is that? And he told me, and I was like, wow, that is a lot of horsepower just to drive that horsepower.
It's like
I've heard the numbers like 800.
It's like 1,000.
Yeah,
I mean,
1,000.
yeah, it was like his motor was 1,000 horsepower to drive that motor. I was
Wow.
like, wow, that's 1,000 horsepower dyno just to drive a motor. You know, I was
That's
like,
not surprising at all based on like what we've
You're
seen
right.
where you could look at combustion analysis and go, wow, I see how much power it's making and I see how much is coming out on the dyno and you're like, holy cow, man.
and you figure out all the other losses, right? If you know what all the other losses are from NA to boost, well, that delta is what took to drive it.
I actually had one. I'll tell a quick story. I had one on the dyno not too long ago, and I actually thought something was wrong with the engine. So what happened was they brought this engine they wanted to test. It was like some big block Chevy with like a Pro Charger on it, And so I was like, I'm going to tell you, it makes more power than my dyno can hold. And so they were like, well, can we just do like a break-in and do a basic tune-up or whatever? And I'm like, all right, well, maybe what we'll do is we'll just, they said let's just take the tube off that connects the scroll of the compressor to the engine, and we'll just run it. Well, that didn't work because as soon as I opened the throttle, there was so much air coming out of that thing. It literally the hairdryer blower blew the entire engine dyno across the dyno cell.
Nice.
And so I was like, all right, well that's not going to work. So let's take the compressor cover off. That way it can't like shoot out, and then you get this murder wheel out there like turning 10 million RPM, right? so anyway, we're running this thing, and I'm like, this thing's busted. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it doesn't make any power. Like this thing should make way more power than this, right? And so, man, we've like the better part of half a day. I'm like going, I'm just telling you, it sounds fine. It runs great. It goes all the way up, and I'm like, it just doesn't make any power. I'm looking at how much fuel flow the thing's using and how much power it's making. I'm like, this math doesn't add up until it finally occurred to me. And it was like 800 or 900 horsepower worth of fuel going into the engine. And it was making like 420. And I'm like, something's wrong with this thing. Till finally I realized what was going on was it was taking so much power to turn the blower.
Yeah.
And so to prove it, we turned the engine off. Now, you take a wrench and you put it on the front of the pulley of the engine. You go to crank it around with the spark plugs in. It's hard to turn, right? So I took a 3/8 Allen wrench, 90-degree Allen wrench, and I stuck it in the front of the compressor wheel. And with 2 fingers, I could turn the engine over because I'm working backwards against all that gear ratio that from the crank. It's like 10-to-1 ratio. You can turn the whole engine over with a 3/8 Allen wrench. So that's going the other way. So you think about, well, if it takes 400 horsepower to turn, one of those kind, which is bigger than the one we had, but smaller than the one you were talking about, like there's room for efficiency there too in our racing world, right? Like, so why don't we look at how could I reduce the losses in that system? Which, by the way, we got a plan for next year.
Yes, we do.
We'll talk about at some point, but there's a lot of areas to gain efficiency in the engine beyond just piston shape and coating and materials. Man, like reducing that friction has been your whole life study.
Our whole
pretty
life,
much.
yeah.
But now we can start looking outside the engine. Like before you left Driven, we started testing like differential fluids and transmission fluids, and you start. What happens is you move away from the combustion chamber and you start looking at the entire vehicle. How do we gain efficiency from every step of the way? And so some of that's using electric motors and not dragging off the engine. Some of that's fluids and materials. But at the end of the day, it's a collaborative effort from the time, I think Billy Godbold said, we keep talking about cylinder pressure because really it's the only thing that makes the car go. But if we could reduce how many taxes we have to pay along the way, we're going to have a net benefit.
Oh, you had to bring politics in.
Well, I was going to say, tribology for the win yet again.
An oil nerd is always going to find a way to get that.
I know, every time.
I thought it would come out earlier in the expo, honestly.
I waited to the end to put the cherry on the top.
I get it. I get it. It makes perfect
There's
sense.
no bad questions, Joe, only bad answers.
That's right. NHRA stuff. Powertrain Performance Expo next year.
That's right, yes.
Question mark. Well, exactly. Here's one for you that I'm just kind of curious. And I'm freestyling here a little bit at the end of the deal. Like, what would you guys like to see? Like, Mark, you and Jason yesterday talking. annoyed and restricted by rules. These rules. Like, what would you like to see? Like a series or a combination or something. We talk Formula One. What would you like to see? A challenge for an engine builder to build. I know you know where I'm going with this. What would you like to see to really be able to create what you want to create?
No rules.
No rules of anything.
No rules whatsoever.
An Indy 500 style race where they say, "Hey, listen, we're going to run 500 miles. Everyone's got to be safe because of these factors.
Yes.
But show
Nothing
up with
else.
whatever you want."
Whatever
Cool
that'd be. But I'll tell you this roundtable stuff here is great, but we should really tape the roundtables that are happening in the back room back there, because that's
we are.
If you want, I didn't know that.
All of our phones are being tracked.
No, it's the stuff that gets talked about out there is pretty darn cool of what people have done, other things have done, and talk. That's what I want to see is those conversations get posted because they're really good.
They're unscripted.
Yes,
and they're organic,
unscripted.
And,
I mean, this gets pretty unscripted like that, But I mean, being the guy that started NASCAR back in 1985, and the rule book was 13 pages long, and now it's 313 pages. I just don't like rules. I really don't.
What would you do if you could do something? You could show up to a race with no rules. What would you show up with?
RPM or engine size? What would you pick?
Right, there you go.
I would pick RPM.
My kind of guy.
I would pick RPM. But the question is, if you really got into it, would you drag race or would you race across the country? What would you do? Because there's a lot of drag racers here, and we talk about durability, and we talk about these issues, and me and George were just back there talking, about his pro stock bike, his pro stock bike, and it's like, and somebody said something about durability, and he said, I could get like 4 passes out of this. I go, that's a mile.
Yeah, you got
we run
990
500
more
miles
to
or
go.
1,000 miles or something. I go, you're talking about a mile, and you said it's durable? Come on now, us NASCAR guys or the Baja stuff, we're going 500, 600, 700 miles. NASCAR now, our Xfinity motors, we're running between 1,000 and 1,200. So it's a big difference. So if you wanted to race, where are you talking and what are we doing? That's a big question of,
It's interesting.
It's almost like drag week or whatever, where these guys got to drive their cars there and then race the thing and then drive them home. Now that's
cool stuff.
I kind of think that's cool
So
because it's kind of no rule. It's kind of like bring what you.
There aren't that many rules. We got to take one of your off-road engines and
There you
what I'm
go.
thinking.
go drag and drive
We'll
that
put
thing.
JD1 in Kevin's wagon.
I would volunteer
Wagon of
for
Doom,
that.
Kevin.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's something like that. I think probably drag week's the closest thing to being something cool. Now
That is cool.
How about if we race between point to point?
How about this? How about
we
road
go
race, drag race, and circle track race all in the same week?
Well, I was thinking, that's your version of like Street Outlaws drag and drive, right? Like,
Right,
we got to
yes.
go, it's kind of
That's a
interesting
good point.
concept.
We could do a drag race, then an oval race,
That
then
would be
some
cool.
other type of race.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, see, the car would, you just change the whole nature of the craft that you're in, right? All of a sudden, like drag racing, you're not going to have skinny tires up front. That's for certain.
No,
But you got to
you're
go around
exactly
a corner.
right. So if
like,
you got to
okay,
do all of
pull those
them,
off.
Yeah,
Well, but there's no rules, so I can change my tires.
you think we can get them to shut down? You think we can get them shut down 40 from Raleigh, North Carolina, all the way to Barstow, California?
We can try.
race 40 all the way.
That would
just
be pretty cool.
I mean, I know they have that race, but it's not really legal. I don't know if I want to go that far with my race here, but
I like
Well,
this
they
idea.
do something similar in the diesel world where they have a pull, a drag race, and a chassis dyno.
Oh, they really do? That's cool. That's
yeah,
awesome.
The Ultimate Call-Out Challenges in Indy, and there's several events around there, but we actually part of that, and it's 3 functions, and it's really cool because I've been to several of them, and you see guys with 4-post lift out in the parking lot, and they're dropping both rear ends out of it, front and rear, if that's the correct way to say that, and and they're putting in different rear ends, weight box on front, they're putting an engine in for chassis dyno because you want to win the chassis dyno, and it's a point system of how you score, and they'll change the engines for torque engine to pull to sled, and it's all in one weekend.
Wow.
And they
Nice.
do that, and
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool event to see the long hours and the preparation to have different engine combinations for the different events.
That's really cool.
And swap it out, including rear ends and weight boxes as pullers put weight box
cool.
and front cooler stuff. So there actually is an event that does that, and
we need a gas class.
YouTube some of the chassis dyno failures on there, and it's pretty. You see why it's a
I
risky.
want to go
Why
back.
does everybody like things blowing up?
I did say I like it. That's interesting. I did say
Everybody
I
likes
like
things
it.
blowing
I
up.
do want to take one step back, Joe, and talk about, like Mark, you were saying, talking to George. You
Yeah.
know, of course, George, I don't even have to ask. I already know what his comeback would have been. Yeah, but look how much power we make compared to you per inch, right? But it goes back to that rules thing, right? So we do an exercise in one of our competition engine development classes where we compare, say, like a naturally aspirated F1 engine from the mid 2000s, right, to like a Cup engine to a Pro Stock NHRA engine, right? Because those are arguably the three most highly developed combinations in gasoline world, right? But what's really interesting about those engines is if you only look at power per inch engine size, the Formula One wins hands down because they do like 19,000 RPM. That's why I asked the question, RPM or engine size, right? But if you look at it in terms of like torque, the Pro Stock engine crushes them. Not torque, I'm sorry, just engine size, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is when you look at the rules package for each of them, you go, well, why does a NASCAR engine only make X power? And you're like, well, give me a sheet metal manifold and two carburetors and all, I'll take all the handcuffs off. I bet you those things make way more power than everybody thinks,
I think they would too.
Yeah, I mean, it would be.
Yeah.
Well, the engines
And
that
restrictor plates.
ran in Pro Stock
yeah.
truck was basically a NASCAR. The Pro Stock truck engines from years ago was a NASCAR
Unrestricted
style
NASCAR,
358 with
But let's bring that
two
back.
fours
There
and
you
a
go.
sheet metal intake.
I like that.
Guys, people out there, Cannonball Run. Everybody's in on this. Freestyle, everybody's in on it. But
I'm gonna
Dan
go
says,
back.
Mark, you got to run the one lap. One lap of America.
I'm going back to though. I think when the car shows up, you can't change it.
See, that's what I was thinking too. Like,
I agree with that.
I think
One
that way we have
combination
wide
for everything.
tires for handling. Do you have to go down the drag strip? Okay.
says the guy who doesn't want any rules.
Does it have to
right?
be a production car?
Hey, we got rules, but they're just small rules.
Well, if it's got to be a production car to begin with, give me the GT3 RS.
Well, one of these gentlemen says,
Okay.
I've been on 140. It'll take the Baja vehicle to make it over the
Oh,
Baja.
I-40, yeah.
Oh, there you go. See,
Yeah.
see, never thought about the potholes. Quick story. My Baja, the Raptor I take down to Baja to chase with, it's got all kinds of lights on it, right? I had to drive it back out here to inspect it. The lights fell off on the Texas on the I-40. So
Goes across
he's right.
Baja, but not I-40.
Yes, it made Baja, but I-40 it didn't make it across. All right, he's got a good point right there. So.
All right, good job, guys. Good
All
job.
right.
That has been the technology roundtable, and now it is time. We've been building to this moment for a year.
Yes.
And change.
Yeah.
A lot of work has come up to this point.
Quite proud of this outcome. Yeah.
Time to share. Get everybody. You've been like, they're doing this thing. Now is the time to share. Get ready, because we're about to reveal the final number.
How much power did it make?
What a day, what a day, what a day. My brain is swollen. I've learned so much today. They told us, don't start cars. We are not going to listen.